So it looks like we're recording. We're gonna try with the 40 minutes that we have left, 45 minutes we have left to wrap up everything with at least the reading. I've got a few more things I want to do with Plato, but we'll definitely, now that we've wasted so much time just trying to figure out how to get, or I've wasted so much time trying to get my computer to work. We're definitely going to have to use at least 20 or 30 minutes of next meeting to wrap up Plato. But let's just quickly, oh geez, I already filled out this chart. Darn it, I gave the game away. All right, well anyway, so that'll make us get through this a little faster. But just to review, at the very end of class last time, we wrapped up Agathon's speech. We moved on to Socrates. The first thing that he does, remember, is that he corrects the speakers that came before him, and he basically distinguishes between what he thinks of as proper praise versus what they did. They just made all sorts of stuff up, and he's going to be honest, right? He's going to tell the truth about Eros, and he's going to praise it in the proper manner. So we got past that part, and then he finally turns to Agathon some more. There's a little bit of cross-examination. We eventually get his account of Eros that he himself heard about through Diotima. And in fact, maybe I should back it up one more slide just to quickly review what we did this last time, I'm pretty sure. So feel free to correct me about that. But they basically, this is a long passage, so I won't revisit it, and I think I skimmed through it pretty quick last time. But there's this cross-examination, this back and forth, this sort of Socratic method where Socrates is questioning Agathon about love, and they establish, I don't know, what you might call a working definition for love. What is Eros? The first thing that he gets Agathon to admit is that love always involves desire. We desire the thing that we love. So it's always desire of something. There's always some object of our affection. And that thing that we love is beautiful. So they define love as a desire for beautiful things. Now, I would assume most of us are going to agree on this definition. We might quarrel on that third bullet point. Do people always desire things that are beautiful? What does it mean to be beautiful? Isn't that a matter of taste, or isn't that subjective? But it's probably less controversial, at least, to say that what we desire, at least, if we love something, we at least see it as beautiful, or at least we see some aspect of it as beautiful, and so we're drawn towards it for that reason. So this is the working definition that they're operating under. And again, love is a desire for beautiful things. This leads Socrates, and really, we shouldn't give him credit for this. Remember, most of all this he's telling us he got from Diotima, this mystical woman who had knowledge of the divine things, and she knew about Eros, and so she schooled Socrates, and now he's schooling them. And basically she says to Socrates, when he was young and he was having the same problems that Agathon was having, and had kind of the same assumptions that Agathon had, she corrected him and told him that love is not beautiful. That love cannot be beautiful. And why is that? Why is it that love cannot be beautiful? Well, it's just given the definition of what love is. Love is a desire for beautiful things. So I think we covered this last time, but who can tell me why is it that love is not beautiful? If love is a desire for beautiful things, then why does that entail that love itself is not beautiful? What's the argument that we're presented with? Maybe we didn't cover this last time, but even if we didn't, and you should have done the reading, but even if you didn't do the reading, think about it. We always desire things when we don't want them, right? Okay, yeah. Okay, Ollie was typing, I guess, as I was answering, but he got it in the chat box, right? You only desire something you don't have. Correct. At least that's what Socrates is insisting, and Agathon agrees, and he says, okay, so if you desire beautiful things, then you can't be beautiful. You wouldn't desire beauty if you already had it. And of course, they clarify. They give a few examples to be precise. Certainly, you can say that you desire to be healthy, even if you're already healthy. You can say that you desire what else? To be strength. You can desire strength, even if you're already strong, even if you're already, some muscle man, But he says when you say that, what you really mean is not that you want health or that you want strength. You already have those things. What you really mean is that you want to maintain them in the future. You want to continue to have them in the future. So it's certainly fine to say you love someone if you're, in a relationship with them or married or something, and you love them, because there's something beautiful about them that draws you towards them. And you're like, well, why would you say that you want them? You already have them. They're already yours. You're already married. You're already in a relationship. Yeah, well, I want to maintain that. I want to keep that going. I want to maintain that bond indefinitely into the future. But yeah, if love is a desire for beauty, the argument is that it can't. Love itself cannot be beautiful. Um, there's she doesn't say much about this, but she mentions this is Diotima talking to Socrates. He's relaying the story. She doesn't say much about this, that love is not good nor bad. It's sort of neutral, and also that love is not wise, right? But ignorant. Or sorry, but not ignorant either, right? Love is in this middle ground between wisdom and ignorance, and that's where we left off, right? I at the end of class last time, I didn't have these filled out. This sort of I had question marks here in the middle column on the last two rows. I my bad. I meant to sort of put those back there and make you guys sort of guess and quiz you on the reading, but oh well. My bad. It's probably better that way anyway, so we can get through this a bit quicker since we're already behind on time. But let me actually find the page number where she or the passage where she's talking to Socrates about this, and she explains what she means by this middle position, this middle quality between ignorance. It's not quite that low. It's not quite that lacking in knowledge, in truth, and wisdom, which has this full sort of the full-fledged meaning, or sort of the full-fledged understanding that Plato speaks of, and which we will actually probably have to elaborate on next class. I was hoping to get that far today, but how things go. By the way, we're supposed to start meeting again after the 14th. I think that after the 14th, though, is spring break. So I don't know how that's supposed to work. I guess we're going to start meeting on campus the Monday after spring break. I sure hope so. I hope that stands for obvious reasons. But this,
yeah, just watch it be. We're going to be meeting after the 14th. Wink, wink.
Yeah. I'm afraid I'm with you on that. I don't want that to be true, but I have a feeling you're going to get some sort of update soon, pushing it back even further. All right, so I found the passage I was looking for. This is, if you've got the textbook, this is page 46, or if you have a different version, it's line 202A. She's just been telling him, how dare you, don't call love ugly. Just because something's not beautiful doesn't mean it's ugly. There's things in the middle, average looking. And if it's not wise, it's ignorant. Or haven't you found out yet that there's something in between wisdom and ignorance? Socrates says, what's that? And she says, it's judging things correctly without being able to give a reason. Surely you see that this is not the same as knowing. For how could knowledge be unreasoning? And it's not ignorance either. For how could what hits truth be ignorance? Correct judgment, of course, has this character. It is in between understanding and ignorance. Okay, so she's not very consistent throughout this passage. She's using these Greek terms, wisdom, pistis, or understanding, noesis, but these seem to be sort of in the same category. Wisdom, understanding, ignorance is this completely deficient category, but correct judgment is somewhere in between. So judging things correctly without being able to give a reason. So you say the right answer, but you don't know why it's the right answer. Like maybe you memorized all the answers to the quiz, but you don't know why they're the right answer. You couldn't explain why they're the right answer. Um, this is a famous distinction that Plato makes, and it's maybe not super essential to this dialogue. They don't really weave it in that much into the account. But I feel like I need to pause here just a minute just to explain it briefly. It'll probably be a little bit more important next class when we start wrapping up Plato and we look at the big picture, Plato's philosophy in general. Um, but they mention it here without giving any examples. Usually when Plato mentions true belief or correct judgment, depending on whatever the translator decides to translate this term as, here obviously correct judgment is their decision. He'll usually give examples when he mentions this, but here she just says, she just sort of talks about it as if you're supposed to already know what she means. The most famous example, perhaps, is from Plato's Meno. That's one of his other dialogues, which involves virtue more than anything else. That's kind of what they discuss. What is virtue? Can virtue be taught? But this notion of correct judgment or true belief, it comes up in the middle of the dialogue, and Socrates, when he's talking to this man Meno, gives him an example of correct judgment versus knowledge or wisdom or understanding. And the example he gives in the Meno, this is the most famous one, so I'll explain it to you, but I actually think I have a better one that I ripped off from an old student of mine. I had a student who came up with a pretty clever example, which I think is much better. But the famous example is knowing the way to Megara. I've been saying Megara for years until I found out it was actually Megara just the other day. So forgive me if I veer back and forth between Megara and Megara. But Socrates talks about someone who has traveled to Megara from Athens. That's where this dialogue takes place, like many of the dialogues in Plato. In fact, all of them, I think, take place in Athens, except for maybe like Phaedrus, I think, is outside the city walls, but all the other ones are in Athens. But he talks about, someone perhaps who has been away from Athens and traveled the road to Megara. They're the ones who have wisdom. They're the ones who know the way to Megara. It's possible to be completely ignorant on how to get there. You have no clue. But there's also a middle sort of ground between knowing the road to Megara, knowing the way to Megara, and not knowing it, right? And it's this middle category, correct judgment, or in other translations, a true belief. So it's correct, it's true, it's a belief, but it's not backed up by any understanding. It's not backed up by any reasoning. So let's say that you live in Athens and you've never left Athens. You've spent your whole life in the city. You've never traveled outside of it. But you know this person who has been to Megara. They're a friend of yours. They know the way to Megara. They have wisdom. They have understanding. They know which road to take, and when it turns right to left, which way you go in the fork in the road. They know what time you should go, what the best inns along the way you can stay at if you're on the road late at night and you got to go to sleep or something, and which parts of the road are dangerous and which ones to avoid, and etc. They have all that wisdom because they've actually seen it. They've actually experienced it. They actually have firsthand experience, and they understand why one would do what one does. at this particular point of the trip. Whereas, let's say you're a friend of this person and they explain all this stuff to you and you listen very attentively. You write down all their directions. They tell you, okay, you want to get to Megara? I keep saying Megara. You want to get to Megara? You know, once you leave the city, you're going to walk about, however many steps or leagues or whatever they're. What did they use to measure back then? I used to know this. Strata, I forget, right? You're gonna go a certain amount of length, and then you're gonna turn left at the fork in the road, etc. So you write all that stuff down. You don't have the wisdom. You just have what Plato would call correct judgment. If you follow the directions, the person didn't lie to you. They told you the truth, and they have the wisdom. Then you will be guided correctly. Okay. The example I was mentioning earlier that I ripped off from a former student. I told him I was going to do it, so he gave me permission. Copyright has been secured. He mentioned well, it's almost like if you're in a situation where you have to diffuse the bomb. Like there's a bomb that's going off. Let's say that you're in this building and the bomb's about to explode and the timer's ticking time bomb is going. You see 5 minutes left. Oh crap. So you're right there and the bomb squad is on the way, but they're not going to make it in time. So they get on the phone with you and the bomb expert tells you how to do it. You don't have wisdom, you don't have understanding. The bomb expert does. And so they ask you questions. What does it look like? Is it does it have blue wires, red wires? What wires do you see? And you tell them, and you're honest. You look with your senses, and then you report to them, and they guide you through it. All right, cut this wire first, and then wait for the ticker to slow down a bit. After it slows down, then you do this wire. So you follow their directions, and their directions are correct. So you are guided by correct judgment, but you don't know why. You don't know why the bomb. You're after that. You're not a bomb expert. You wouldn't be able to explain why you cut the blue wire first and then the yellow wire. I'm just making this stuff up, obviously, but that would be that sort of middle ground that's in between. And so love is not Eros. What we're talking about is Eros is not lacking in some sort of guide towards truth. It's not, love is not ignorant. It's not completely ignorance, but it's not wise either. It actually has a desire for wisdom as well. And this is the most shocking one, at least that's how it's presented in the dialogue, is that love is not even a god. So every speaker so far, until we get to Socrates, they've all been assuming that when they're talking about Eros, they're talking about a deity. There's this god Eros, and here's what this god does. And Diotima corrects them, right? Diotima tells Socrates, and he relays the message that no, love is not even a god. Love is not mortal. It's not human, but it's not a god either. Love is in this middle ground, in this middle space between the gods and the humans, the spiritual realm, as she refers to it. So love is a great spirit. What does that mean? Well, it's on page 47 where she explains. This is line 202E, where she says, he is a great spirit, Socrates. Everything spiritual you see is in between God and mortal. What is their function, I asked. So the spirits are this sort of middle ground. What are they there for? What do they do, Socrates asks. They are messengers who shuttle back and forth between the two, conveying prayer and sacrifice from men to gods, while to men they bring commands from the gods and gifts in return for sacrifices. Being in the middle of the two, they round out the whole and bind fast the all to all. Through them, all divination passes. Through them, the art of priests in sacrifice and ritual, in enchantment, prophecy, and sorcery. Gods do not mix with men. They mingle and converse with us through the spirits instead, whether we are awake or asleep. He who is wise in any of these ways is a man of the spirit. But he who is wise in any other way, in a profession or manual work, is merely a mechanic. These spirits are many and various, and one of them is love. So love has this sort of function. Love, like all the other spirits, conveys messages from men to the gods, from humans, right, through our prayers and our sacrifices, and the other way, right, messages from the gods to men through our dreams, through visions, giving us gifts and bringing us commands. That's what spirits do, according to Diotima, and love is just one of these spirits. Now, I mentioned this before, that one popular way to read this dialogue is to see each of these speeches as progressive, as getting better, as getting closer and closer to the truth, as giving us a fuller and more complete and more accurate and truthful account of love, of Eros. Now, I'm not married to that interpretation. I have my reservations about it. It certainly, I would definitely argue for sure that Socrates and his presentation of Eros is obviously going to be the one that Plato would endorse. At least it seems that way. But there's another reading too, that this last speech of Diotima or Socrates or whoever you want to give credit to, this last speech, not only is it an improvement of all the previous speeches, but it somehow incorporates elements, just the good ones, obviously, the truthful ones, but it incorporates elements of all the previous speeches. And I think there might be some evidence for that interpretation in the passage I just read, where he says, you know, love is a great spirit, he binds all to all, you know, all these spirits are messengers. I mean, I'm sort of reminded of one of the previous speeches. Does anybody else have any idea which one I might have in mind? Who does this sound kind of like? Who else talked about love as having to do with religion, having to do with the relationship between humans and the gods? No one remembers? It was Symmachus. Remember, he was the physician. He's the one that said love guides like a lot of stuff: medicine, art, poetry, agriculture. All the seasons changed, guided by love. And then remember, he says that like divination, ritual, all the religious rites, they were guided by love. So you could argue that this is a correction of that. That, well, religion involves all spirits, but love is just one of those. So in a certain sense, you're right. Sure. What's going on here, though, when we get to the actual speech of Diotima? This is another, you could argue, piece of evidence for the interpretation that Socrates' turn, his speech, whatever, you know, however you want to label this, incorporates some of the best elements of all the preceding speeches. Because the next thing he does, you could say, is he's kind of ripping off Aristophanes and to a lesser extent Phaedrus by utilizing myth, by utilizing mythology, telling us a story about the origin of Eros, of the origin of love. So, what do we learn in this speech about Eros? Well, apparently, everybody else has it wrong. And Eros did not come at the beginning. Eros is, you know, fairly young. And Eros was born apparently at Aphrodite's birthday party. He doesn't really clarify, or she. I guess I should give Diotima. She's the one talking here, right? Socrates is just recalling her speech, but she says that again, Eros was born at Aphrodite's birthday party, and I'm assuming she doesn't clarify, but I'm assuming she's talking about the Olympian Aphrodite. Obviously, they're hanging out with Zeus, and it's the Aphrodite that we might be all familiar with, the one that's really beautiful, that's emerging from the ocean and the seashell, naked with her hair covering her jiggly bits. That's the Aphrodite we have in mind. And remember, Pausanias talks about how Eros and Aphrodite are always paired together, that they're associated with one another. So that's one part of it. What happened at this party, I'm not going to read this whole long passage. This is on page 48. Well, maybe I will. It might be faster than me explaining it, right? She says that when Aphrodite was born, the gods held a celebration. So the day she was born wasn't like her first or second or third. It was like her birthday. Poros, which means way or resource in Greek, the god of resourcefulness, of finding a way. Poros, the son of Metis, Metis meaning cunning, was there among them. When they'd feasted, Pania, meaning poverty, the god of poverty. It's interesting, the Greeks, I guess they had a god for everything. Um, Pania came begging, as poverty does when there's a party, and she stayed by the gates. Now, Poros got drunk on nectar, and feeling drowsy, he went into the garden of Zeus where he fell asleep. Then Pania schemed up a plan to relieve her lack of resources. She would get a child from Poros. So she lay beside him and got pregnant with Eros, with love. That is why love was born to follow Aphrodite and serve her, because he was conceived on the day of her birth. And that's why he is also by nature a lover of beauty, because Aphrodite herself is especially beautiful. So what's the point of this myth? I honestly don't think Plato believed in any of this stuff. So why is he using this as the sort of paradigmatic myth of Eros? This is more representative of Eros. If anyone in here has ever heard of or read the Republic, you might be familiar with Plato's Republic. Some maybe, I don't know. One of his most famous works. He mentions this idea, or he introduces this concept of a noble lie, or a true lie, or good lie. That it's okay to lie as long as that lie leads you towards truth. In that context, it's pretty controversial because he's basically advocating that the people in power should be able to lie to those that they govern. Otherwise, they won't behave. So they have to tell them lies to get them to guide them towards being good, well-behaved citizens, towards truth. Kind of reminds me of when Fauci told everyone that you didn't need a mask so that people wouldn't buy a bunch of masks. Plato would say, I don't know if Plato would have agreed with that, but he would have said that that kind of thing certainly is necessary. So he uses myth a lot. Plato does. He always, a lot of his dialogues, he brings up mythology. My reading is that these are just good lies. When we hear his myth of the cave, the allegory of the cave, I don't think he's trying to argue that this is a true story, that there were really these gods that got drunk, and that the goddess of poverty. But what's the point? Again, I think that this is supposed to be a kind of representation or a metaphor that actually gets to the truth of what love is really like. What is love really like? Apparently, it has all these elements. It's drawn towards beauty. because love was born on the birthday of the most beautiful of the goddesses, Aphrodite. It is resourceful. It always finds a way. It's cunning, but it's also always impoverished. It's always in poverty. Let's see how Diotima explains this. We'll just pick it up right where I left off. As the son of Poros and Penia, his lot in life is set to be like theirs. In the first place, he is always poor. He's far from being delicate and beautiful, as ordinary people think he is. Instead, he is tough and shriveled and shoeless and homeless, always lying on the dirt without a bed, sleeping at people's doorsteps and in roadsides under the sky, having his mother's nature, always living with need. But on his father's side, he's a schemer after the beautiful and the good. He's brave, impetuous, intense, an awesome hunter, always weaving snares, resourceful in his pursuit of intelligence, a lover of wisdom, literally a philosopher. Remember, philosophy in the Greek, it's phileia, sophia, love of wisdom, right? He's a lover of wisdom. He lacks wisdom, but he wants it. Through all his life, he's a genius with enchantments, potions, and clever pleadings. This might be a bit of a stretch, but some of that stuff, especially the he's desperate, shriveled, homeless, staying in people's doorstep. But some of this stuff reminds me a bit of Pausanias's speech. Remember what Pausanias said, that there are many behaviors that we think are kind of off-putting when people do them for other reasons, but when they do them for love, we praise them. When people get down on their knees and beg for money or beg for a job, that's like undignified. But when you do these, we debated whether that's the case, but in a way, maybe there's that kind of, I don't know, maybe I'm reaching there, but that passage I just read kind of remind me a bit of Pausanias. She goes on to say that he's by nature neither immortal nor mortal. Yeah, what's that all about? How is her insistence that he's in the spiritual? How does that fit? She didn't really get that specific when she brought up the spiritual. She explained what the spiritual was, but not exactly what kind of spirit love was. What kind of messenger is he? Um, well, he springs into life when he gets his way. Now he dies all on the same day. So that reminds me a bit of the speech of Agathon. Remember where Agathon talks about how love is supple and delicate and fluid. Otherwise, love wouldn't be able to completely engulf your soul instantaneously and then just leave as quickly as it got there without you even noticing. It's kind of sneaky like that. But it's not constant. It comes and it goes. It's not mortal, but it's not immortal either. He is his father's son. He keeps coming back to life, but then he anything he finds his way to always slips away. And for this reason, love is never completely without resources and never rich, right? Partly impoverished, partly resourceful. He is in between wisdom and ignorance as well. In fact, none of the gods loves wisdom or wants to become wise, for they already are wise. And no one else who is wise already loves wisdom. On the other hand, no one who is ignorant will love wisdom either or want to become wise. For what's especially difficult about being ignorant, this is kind of a sad point that he makes, but it's, I think, true to a certain extent. What's especially difficult about being ignorant is that you're content with yourself, even though you're neither beautiful and good nor intelligent. And if you don't think you need anything, of course you won't want what you don't think you need, right? And so those people, they think that they already sort of know it all, so they're not going to try to learn anything, and they're really probably some of the most ignorant around. Now she brings up this point that is rather problematic, given the definition of love, right? And remember what the definition was, right? It says that we desire beautiful things, right? Well, love is a desire for beautiful things. and again, we could debate, what is beautiful? Is that subjective, etc.? We're going to actually get to that, probably not today because we're so short on time, but we'll definitely get to it. It's kind of at the end of the reading, or at least at the end of what I want to do from this reading. Why do we desire beautiful things, though? What is the reasoning behind that? What makes us want the things that we want? What do we expect from a purely selfish standpoint? What do we expect from the achievement of possessing these things we desire? I suppose there's not like one right answer, but we obviously don't want anything bad or ugly. Right. That's kind of the point they make. They're like, yeah, nobody wants. We all want beautiful things. So there's really there's nothing that's distinct about wanting beautiful things. And she's going to get to that in a minute. That's a problem, right? It seems like, given their definition, everybody's a lover because everybody wants beautiful things, or at least they want what they think are beautiful things, right? But what is the expectations? You want something good, right? You want something good. You have high expectations, but what are you expecting? So if you want, so you have this thing you desire. You let's say you are in love with somebody and you want them to be in love with you. Why? What do you think would happen if you both fell in love with each other? What would happen? What's your end goal here?
I guess to be with this person forever. So you whenever you're in a relationship, you go in it expecting the best out of this person, the best for this person to give to your life.
And when that happens, if it happens, right? Why would you want that to happen? I mean, it sounds kind of like a dumb question, but how would that make you feel?
I mean, you want it to happen because you're in love.
Right. But I'm assuming that that's going to make you feel good, right? So we're motivated by all sorts of, I guess, things. There's all sorts of things that motivate us. But this passage on page 50, where she's trying to kind of get Socrates to sort of zero in on the ultimate goal, right? So, yes, I want to find somebody who I care about. I want to find somebody who I want to spend the rest of my life with, and I want to care for them. I want them to care for me. I want us to care for each other, make each other better people. And what are we both going to get out of that if it works out that way? Is there like a one-word answer you could maybe like sum it up? What do they say?
Happiness.
Yeah, who said
Happiness.
Yeah. So, well, that's the word they use, right? So, I'll go with that. Contentment, happiness, fulfillment, whatever. But happiness is probably somebody jumped in with something else though, or maybe they didn't.
I said serotonin.
Serotonin. Maybe that's what it all sort of boils down to. Like what's the other one? Oxytocin and serotonin and dopamine, right?
Yeah.
Right. Endorphins, right? Yeah. But what the poets call happiness, what the biologists call hormones. But anyways, yeah. So yeah, you could be like a total scientist about it. But yeah, happiness. And I've got so this is the question: why? Why do we want beautiful things? Well, because we feel like if we get those things, it will bring us happiness. And really, the Greek word here that's translated as happiness is eudaimonia, and that translation is, like many things in the ancient Greek language, it's quite lacking. Many scholars, commentators are very iffy about even translating this word, eudaimonia. Aristotle defines it as how does he say? It's a virtuous activity of the soul, or it's an activity of the soul in accordance with complete excellence. So it really, in the Greek mind, eudaimonia has this connotation of fulfillment, completeness, contentment. Aristotle characterizes it as sort of becoming the best version of yourself you can possibly be. achieving your function, your purpose in life. So there's all sorts of connotations here, right? But they don't really elaborate on it too much here, so I guess maybe I shouldn't either. But here in Plato, I find it curious because they offer a very similar, kind of a short version of an argument that you find much later, 20, 30, 40 years later, in Aristotle, who was apparently one of Plato's students, although it's questionable whether they actually ever met each other. Aristotle did study at the academy at Plato's school. But this argument you get on page 50 is basically sort of, why do we want the things we want? We think they're good. We think they're beautiful. Well, why do we want beautiful things? Well, because we think that if we get them, we'll be happy. Well, why do we want to be happy? Well, we want to be happy because we just want to be happy. That's the end. That's it. Happiness is a self-justified aim. It's the thing you want for the sake of itself, and you want everything else for the sake of it. And as I said, Aristotle makes the same argument, draws it out a little bit more in his famous work on ethics. But I won't dwell on it too much here, but some people were already kind of, I think, previewing where we're going with this. I don't think, let me see in the comments here. I want to give credit where credit's due. I think it was Tatiana or... Yeah, so it's like, we obviously don't want something bad. We all want something beautiful. Nobody, give me some of that bad stuff. Give me some of that ugly stuff. We all want beautiful things. We all want good things. So if we define love as a desire for beautiful things, if we define love as a desire for good things, that really means the same thing, more or less. Then aren't we all lovers? Are we all in love? That seems to be too broad of a definition. And so the question is, why are some people called lovers, but some aren't? When really, given the definition that Socrates and Diotima and apparently all the guys that are listening, they agreed, Agathon is going along with this. According to that definition, then everyone's a lover. But she explains that basically what you got, and this is a little bit more obvious in the Greek language, what you've got is and there's something similar in English, I guess. The word artist in English, there's a similar ambiguity. But she talks about the Greek word poetry, how to call someone a poet, usually if a Greek called someone a poet, what they meant were they were talking about somebody who wrote poems, who wrote a play, some sort of creative artist type. But the word poesis in ancient Greek, it literally means to bring something forth, to create. And so really you could call someone who builds a building a poet by that. And maybe they did, she sort of, the way she explains it here sounds like they did. Similar in English, the word artist. Now, when we use the word artist, usually, typically, what we have in mind is somebody with a paintbrush in front of a canvas, maybe wearing a beret or something like that, or maybe a sculptor, sculpting on the sculpting wheel. And that's what we think of. But you use the word artist more broadly than that. You might call somebody a culinary artist, or a martial artist, or the artist formerly known as Prince, or whatever, right? Musicians. So similar ambiguity. And she says the same thing with the word lover. Yes, in a way, everyone is a lover. Everyone's in love. Everyone desires beautiful things. But why do we call some people lovers and some people not lovers? Well, that's because some people are in love with true beauty, what is truly a beautiful thing, and others are only desiring what they perceive what appears to be beautiful. Now, we don't have time to get into the details of what the heck that even means and what is true beauty, because we're already like, 3 minutes left before class is over. But that's about all we've got left. There's a couple more things that we've got to wrap up when it comes to this dialogue that we didn't cover today. Namely, why do we even do all this besides our own selfish happiness? What's the point of love in the grand scheme of things? Like, what is the function of love in the context of the cosmos, in the context of the universe? Why does it exist? What is its purpose? Not for us, but for all. And also, what is real love? What is true love? And why are some people true lovers but not others? It's probably not what you would think. I mean, what would you think that, if I hear that somebody's in love or somebody's a lover, I'm thinking they're like in a relationship. They got the hots for somebody. You think that's you think that's where Diotima's going? Unconditional.
Not necessarily.
What's that? No, definitely not. Not at all. In fact, it's does anybody know where she's going with this? What's true love of true beauty? What's that? Miss Lisa says unconditional, no strings attached. I like that, but nope. That's a very self-love. Depends on what you mean by that. How do you love the self? Oh, baby, don't hurt me no more. Yeah. What is love? Okay. Yeah, we'll end it on that with Ollie's comment. Who the heck sings that song? What is love? It was like big hit in the late 80s, early 90s.
I think it was Hadaway.
Okay.
Yeah, it was in the movies.
Yeah, that song has been a hit for like 2 or 3 decades. Wasn't it in like Ninth or Roxbury or something like that? Anyway, I'm not